ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, ghouls, and however you identify, welcome back to another faction focus. The good, the bad, and the ugly. With me, the bone, and you, the chef.
That's correct. It is
Yes,
me, the chef.
It is he, the chef.
Yeah.
So this is the second installment in this series.
Mm-hmm.
I quite enjoyed our discussion last time.
Yeah. It's always an interesting thing to sort of put these thoughts to film, and then obviously getting your guys sort of things, because there's obviously things that we're going to miss, or things that we probably think or agree with, and we just, we could literally spend hours doing this. We're not going to. The whole point is to try and make this a little bit more digestible. That's the aim. May or may not work.
We'll see. Well, today we're talking about the Necrons.
Yeah.
This is definitely your baby more than mine, although I do like to build a pyramid. Call the storm. Yes, that's what I like.
Yeah, it's true, you do.
I do like these things.
Yeah. So for those of you that haven't watched the Tau one, so that was our first in the sort of the series, as it were, or for those of you that just haven't been following along, maybe you're watching this later down the road and you've picked up some Necrons from the Indomitus box and you go, oh, I wonder what Tabletop Tactics think about these guys. The way that this works is we do the good, the bad, and the ugly. Now, the good is the good stuff. The bad is the not good stuff. That is, as its name implies, the bad.
Yeah.
The ugly is where it gets a little bit murky, because that doesn't necessarily mean
bad or good.
Worse than bad. Nor does it mean that it's, a particularly ugly model. These are kind of more subjective, more like game designy ones, things that are a bit more up in the air, as it were. Whether due to various factors, and they're probably the ones that are more subject to change.
Yes.
Because we just don't know yet.
Nope.
So that's the gist of it. So don't sort of, ugly is a strong word.
Yes.
But it doesn't necessarily mean that it's like the worst, because otherwise we'd just call it bad, worse, and worst.
Yes. And none of you are ugly, by the way. You're all beautiful.
Yeah. That's true.
Just want to make sure you know that.
Yeah.
You cheeky so-and-so.
Yeah, we're not talking about you. We're talking about armies.
So
Necrons, an interesting one. Obviously, they are the second of the focal points of the 9th edition,
which is exciting. I think that's a good thing.
I think it's great. I think it's awesome. Obviously, so we'll run through a few quick good bits. The new models are amazing.
Oh, they look so good.
The new sort of fluff that's been building up to the return of the Silent King.
Oh, it's so good.
It's so good. I cannot wait to get my grubby mitts on the Void Dragon.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
There's a lot to be excited about as a Necron player and as just a modeler. I've got friends that are messaging me going I don't play Necrons, but I can't wait to get painting them. So you're going to see a lot of them. Which is not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing at all. That's in essence a good thing. I think the Necrons have a lot of tricks up their sleeve when it comes to maneuverability.
Yep.
So that they are able to kind of go out onto the objectives, into the mid-board. So 9th edition helps them a lot there.
Yes.
There's another good thing.
Is that it?
That's not it. It's I just sort of the cogs are turning in my head, and I'm thinking they're reasonably resilient, and with the points changes to everyone, the main problem of reanimation protocols, which was you just wipe the unit, you don't have to worry about it, is still semi there. But because a lot of armies have gone up in points or have had to lose a little bit more firepower than you would expect them to bring in compared to 8th edition, reanimation protocols has more chance to kick in. Having said that, obviously your Necron stuff has gone up as well. So that's kind of like an ugly. I've just thrown in a little ugly in there.
We've skipped bad, we went straight to ugly.
We've not skipped bad, this is just the stream of consciousness.
Yeah.
I think because of the changes to the core mechanics in terms of your actions and sort of your secondaries and your matched play, you can absolutely use them to your full advantage.
Yes.
The Necrons themselves, they are in an interesting spot, I would say, more than other armies right now, apart from maybe the Space Marines, because one can infer that with all of these new models that have been previewed and are not in the Indomitus box, that there's more still to come. Yes. Could be a codex. So that is an exciting time. That's a good thing because it means that you kind of hit the ground running. So you get to see lots of exciting stuff. The bad things, however, and this is where I'm a bit unsure with reanimation protocols, they're still rubbish, really. It's a fantastically fluffy mechanic that doesn't work. Yeah. Because you just kind of go, I just kill the unit.
Yeah.
Easy peasy. And it's not difficult nowadays.
No.
To kill a unit of things.
Not when you're re-rolling everything.
Not in a world of rerolls. Now, you can, of course, mitigate it by using terrain to your advantage, and you can use various things. It would be a shame if there was, we've got Cryptex to improve that reanimation protocols if you get the chance to go off. I'll address the proverbial elephant in the room. No, the reanimator is not good. It's awful. It's really bad. You look at the thing and go, that's awesome. It's toughness 5. It's got 6 wounds. Yeah. Why would I take it? It's people are saying oh, but you can use 3 of them and and because of the wording and you can put a 2-up re-rolling 1s on your warriors now, and you kind of go, yeah, you absolutely could. And then your opponent goes, oh, I'll shoot everything else. Or I'll just kill the reanimators one by one very easily. Or I'll just fire everything into the warriors and then you don't get your reanimation protocols at all. It's the Markalite syndrome.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's a tax that the army pays for, which on paper looks great, but in reality it doesn't seem to translate into the game.
It doesn't work. You're paying the points for if it happens, and this has always been my issue with reanimation protocols and the way it works in 8th edition, which is in low points games it's super oppressive because you can't bring enough firepower to kill a unit, and then it just comes back, and that's super depressing to play against. At high points levels, even with the points changes in the Munitora manual, your opponent can bring enough firepower to just go, oh, your special rule, that's cute.
Yeah.
Your entire army rule, yeah, that's fun. So that is unequivocally bad. The reanimator and just the way that reanimation works. On paper, it should work amazingly for 9th edition because you want resilient units. So I think I've decided that it isn't ugly at all. It is bad.
It's bad.
The other bad things, I guess, is regards to the points changes. There are a few that you sort of look at and you kind of go, "Ooh, that's a pretty big blow," but a lot of armies have received similar blows. We've harped on about points before, so as it is here and now, 18 points for an immortal is a lot.
Yeah,
when you compare that to an intercessor. And I know that I have said to you guys before, no, you shouldn't compare everything to an intercessor because it's comparing apples and oranges. It's 2 different things. It's 2 different units. However, at their core, it's not very good. They are, and they've always been expensive. They kind of hit a sweet note around about chapter approved, I think it was 2018, and then 2019 made it a little bit better. And they were like, okay, Necrons kind of work now. And then everything's gone back up. Yeah. So I get it. That's not great. The other bad thing I would say is the changes to fly for Necrons. Now, this is a weird one for me because I love the fly change. I love the fact that you can't fall back and shoot for free anymore. However, the Necrons have a lot of fly units that need to be shooting. So it's bad if that's what you were relying on.
Yeah.
It's good if you're playing against them. So a common strategy was your 3 Doomsday Arcs and you have them out the front and they just scream.
Yeah.
Because you can kind of go, you move them up, you broadside them, which always looked really weird to me.
Yeah.
You move them up and you go, yeah, all right, I'll charge them. All right. Then they jump back over your lines or behind you, you've pincered them and you just annihilate the stuff in the middle.
Yeah. Which is kind of cool.
You can't do that anymore.
No.
So you have to change up how you operate. Now, Wraiths can still do all that stuff. I mean, you won't really you're not shooting with the Wraiths because you might take the particle pistol now, or the particle caster. That's what it's called. Maybe if you've got a few points spare. So they can still do that in a pinch, but like your Destroyers, your Tomb Blades, your Ghost Arcs, your Doomsday Arcs, you've got to be a bit more careful with them now. So if you were reliant on that as just kind of like a get out of jail free card, that's bad. I would err more on the side of it's ugly, but that's just because you need to think a bit more about how the army's going to operate.
Yeah.
The other, the Plasmancer is also bad. He's real bad. You would never take him. Like, I'm throwing that out there now. Like, he looks awesome. He plays bad. That's kind of it. I mean, he's cheap, but Necrons, I think, definitely suffer from they need a lot of support characters.
Yeah.
You are not going to use one of your quite precious HQ slots on a guy that might do a mortal wound to something on a 4+ in 18 inches and provide nothing else for your army.
Yeah.
It's not happening. Like, now the Royal Warden, on the other hand, incidentally, offsets that fly change because he gives it an infantry unit fall back and shoot.
Which is cool.
Which is awesome. Yeah. So that's where you might kind of go, yeah, I can use him for something different. Your Gauze Reapers are ugly. Like, I know I'm focusing on Indomitus here, guys, but that's because it's all the new stuff. The Gauze Reapers are ugly because they're just... 14 inches is kind of weird. You can't use them from Deep Strike. You can use them from a Ghost Arc, but you've got to get, like... Again, and that sort of is where that fly kind of is a bit weird.
Yeah.
It makes them tricky to use. That doesn't make them bad. It just makes them tricky, and a good player will find a way to utilize them in an effective way. I'm still a bit iffy on them. Look, the Necrons as a whole, I think, are in an interesting spot because as we currently stand, I would say that they operate very strangely.
Yeah.
They're a mid-range army.
Yeah, this has always been my issue with them. When I play them, I don't quite get what they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, they've got a few core units that you go, right, that makes sense, and this is how I was going to use them, and that's great. So, Immortals, for example, Tesla Spammers, you use it. It's amazing. It's really, really good.
Is it going to be as good with Dense Cover nowadays, though? Because it's on a 6+, it's not unmodified 6s. Yeah. So, I mean, like, there's certain things. So, I mean, to take a phrase from other, mainly video games, especially MOBAs, there's something in game design called the fantasy. And the whole point of that is that when you have something, you want to create a fantasy for it. So, for Necrons, the fantasy of the army is a slow, inexorable, super resilient army. That is then offset by them being short range, but their guns are really good, right? Because they're supposed to be hyper advanced, like to the point where the Elder look at it and go, oh, man, I wish I had some of that stuff.
Yeah.
Their guns aren't great, really. It's kind of it's sort of leaning into, like, oh, they've got good AP, and that was great at the beginning of 8th when AP was kind of rare. Now everything has AP, and you're often better. They are kind of, I mean, they're slow, but you can offset that with, like, their technological tricks, like teleporting, the Deceiver. You can use, like, the Nephrek if you want to go really into that and go, like, auto advance 6 and use teleportation stratagems. You've got the Veil. So you can offset that. The problem is when they get into that mid-range, that's dangerous for them because they kind of, they've got maybe a turn or two of shooting, and then at that point they're in combat. Now, obviously against some armies, they're not going to have a combat unit, but you can utilize units that you don't mind that aren't shooting. I know that I would throw away a unit of 10 guardsmen if it meant that a unit of 10 Tesla Immortals aren't shooting at me.
Oh, 100%.
And now with the changes to fly and things like that, yeah, you see that Rhino? He's going to charge those Destroyers.
Yeah.
Well, okay, that's not so good. So I've got the attrition aspect of it, and I'm going to win by going, you know what, I don't care if I get tied up in combat because my other units are going to be rocking around, coming back to life. Well, no, because as we've established, you shoot them, they die, they don't come back.
Yeah.
So the army as a whole, I think, is quite ugly. And that's because of it, at its core fantasy, it doesn't really fulfill it. It doesn't make you feel like they operate the way that they should, or at least the way that they kind of feel like that they were going for.
Yeah.
Let's take something like the Harlequins. They're super fast. They're fragile as anything. When they hit, and they hit well, they can hit like an absolute truck. Fusion pistols, the haywire, loads of attacks in combat. If you catch them off guard, or your opponent goes full in and doesn't pick the right point, they crumple, and they crumple pretty badly.
Yeah.
But that is the fantasy of the Harlequins, and it's realized really well because they're like a scalpel, and they make that sort of like that amazing sort of shot. They make that moment. They use their speed. They utilize it, and they're active in all the phases. Marines are another one. You can take quite a small army because of their overlapping buffs, which I don't agree with. You know, I think overlapping buffs on top of overall cheapness is a bad thing. Now, if they suddenly went, yeah, an intercessor's 25 points, but that's assuming that you're going to be having reroll everything. Okay. Because it makes the army very small and elite.
Yeah.
But it makes them operate how they should. They're the best of the best of the best.
Yeah.
That's how they should operate. So they kind of fulfill the fantasy. The Necrons don't, because their shtick is super resilient, which they don't have.
No.
Their toughness is 4.
It's interesting because you say that, and like you read the fluff and everything, and you go, yeah, okay, they're like this endless sea of like metal warriors. It doesn't matter how many you cut down, they just keep standing up and standing up.
And that's what I mean. The rule itself is written super fluffy, because it gives you that ability to do so.
But it's just
in practice, it's super easy to get rid of.
And I just, when I play against Necrons or even use them, I never have a thought that I go, well, at least my army's resilient.
Yeah,
I never have that.
No. And when it happens, it's almost like that's nice.
Yeah.
Like
and that shouldn't.
Yeah, it's a bonus that you're paying for. It's not a bonus that you're getting for free. Let's put it this way: compare it to combat doctrines. Now, I know that combat doctrines have gone through a change in the last,
which is much better.
8 to 9 months.
Yeah.
They initially dropped. And then the supplements came out, and that kind of pushed them over the edge. So they reined it back in. That's fine. But for me, it doesn't often feel like the combat doctrine has been accounted for in the points cost.
Yeah.
It's a nice bonus.
Yeah.
You look at the Necrons and reanimation protocols, you can tell that you're paying for it.
Yeah.
A destroyer is now 55 points for a 10-inch move guy that's ballistic skill 3, rerolling ones to hit with a free shotgun that is admittedly pretty good, although D3 damage, anything that's random damage, I despise. You're paying points for the potential of it being amazing, but 9 times out of 10 it won't be. They're reasonably, toughness 5, 3 wounds and a free up save is nice, but they've got no invulnerable. No. They can't fall back and shoot anymore.
No.
And they can stand back up. And this is the thing, and this is where I don't like the mechanic. Because when a destroyer stands back up, you kind of go, okay, 55 points, yeah. When they don't, you kind of go, all right, I'm glad I paid. I'm just spitballing a number here. I'm glad I paid that extra 15 points for that model to stand up. But then you also look at it and you go, all right, well, let's compare it to, say, we talked about crisis suits in the last one. You could take a bodyguard, a crisis bodyguard with 3 missile launchers, which has double the output of that, in terms of shots, at worse ballistic skill, similar stat line.
Yep.
Same damage, worse AP but higher strength, so, sort of swings and roundabouts, longer range. But he's 78. So this is where you kind of go, is 55 points? This is the problem. It's so hard to quantify whether that rule is worth it or not.
Yeah.
And that's the army as a whole is quite ugly, because you just, you just don't know whether your army is going to be worth it and the points you're paying for are going to be worth it.
Yeah.
So it's difficult to say. I think that the Necrons can absolutely work because you can utilize the tricks and the shenanigans they have. It's just the core army rule that you're paying for doesn't work.
Yeah,
and
I
that
agree.
puts them in a really tough spot because, yes, they've gone up in points. A lot of armies have gone up in points. You've got all this new stuff coming, which we don't know what it's going to do. You guys don't know what it's going to do. Now, but where we are now, that's the tricky bit because, I mean, they were never a top tier army. We're going to go competitive talk here. I think they were always middling. You saw people do well with them, but they were like pushing the army to the edge, to the absolute edge of what it could do. And I think you're still going to have to do the same thing now, but I don't think it's going to push you into top table territory.
No.
I think they're still certainly a fun army to play with, an interesting army to play with, but they are, again, you sort of look at that fantasy and you kind of go, well, they're not as resilient as some armies. They don't outgun some armies. There's better short range armies. There's better mobile armies. They're a weird jack of all trades army.
It's not
because they can do combat. You can build combat. You can build around shooting.
I'm a big fan of Wraiths. I think they're amazing.
Yeah, Wraiths are great. Lich Guard, when they work, are really good. I can't wait to try out the new Scorpet guys.
Yeah.
Because they look so much fun.
Yeah.
The problem is we are limited with what you can use them as, because if you go for that sort of, because I'm a big fan of balanced armies. I like to have a little bit of everything.
Yeah. And
you can do that with Necrons, but then you're not focusing on an element, and that kind of leaves you a bit thin on the ground in some of those places.
I think that's it with Necrons. It always feels like if you load it too heavy one way, you really suffer in other ways. Whereas there are a lot of armies out there that you don't feel like that. You're like, well, I'm going to have that, and that's really going to fulfill that role in this army.
And it will do it amazingly
do amazing well. Cool. Yeah. I've spent my points in that, and I know that's done. Whereas with Necrons, it kind of feels a bit like, well, I'm going to put in, I really want to have my Immortals going. Now, I need something to kind of distract them. Okay, so I can either take more Immortals, so I just have
you're just going to go all in on
so I just have redundancy, or but then I don't have any combat element, or or I take a combat element, but then while Wraiths are okay in combat, and Lich Guard are when they work, okay, they're not going to break an army. They seem more like they're there as a distraction for something else. But then because we're paying this points tax, the something else doesn't hit hard enough.
Yeah.
And so you're in this kind of weird way. And then also I think Necrons, it's going to be really interesting to see how they work with the core game. Because again, you're going to want this speed, and you want to be on objectives and all that sort of stuff. And at the moment, I think if you were to play them how you played them in 8th, I just don't think they would cut the mustard in being able to hold objectives, to stay there, and to put out the firepower. Because you're paying, like you say, you're paying for this resilience. So in theory, you go, great, that would be cool. But then it doesn't quite work. They're not like Death Guard or somewhere like that.
No.
I think, we'll talk about Death Guard another time, but they seem to have hit that note really well. And they can do that. They can set objectives. And then also, if you come to the objective and you want to get it off,
they can fight you.
They're going to fight you, and they're going to hurt you.
Yeah.
So it's, but with I know what you mean. Whenever I look at the army, I just kind of go, I don't quite feel what you are.
Yeah, I don't know what you want to try to be.
Yeah.
I don't know what you want to do. You're like that weird kid at school that decided to change up his style every week. 1 week he was a rocker, the next week he was like a prep kid, the next week he was hanging out with the jocks, the next week he was in the math club.
Who are you?
It feels
weird kid.
It feels like the Necrons are just in that really weird midway point where they want to be this sort of slow, technologically, it's like what I said earlier, it's this slow, mid-ranged army, but there's other armies that just do it better.
Yeah.
Either because they focus on it, or because they just have better units for it. So it is a tough one. Now, I am obviously a big Necron fan, Necron player, and I am going to make them work. And that for me, I relish a challenge of trying to make it work. It's when you get to that stage where you're just looking at it. I was trying to write up a list last night, and I was looking at it going but how? Like I want to include the Scorpex. I want to include like their lord and have like the 4 of them running around just carving up stuff. But I know the minute that I do, they're just going to get blown off the table.
Yeah.
In seconds.
Yeah.
Because the minute that you kill all 3 of them, which is not difficult to do,
No.
I go, cool. Well, I mean, I've paid the points for them. I mean, and that's not massively expensive. Like in the grand scheme of things, you run them around with the 3 of them and the lord, it's about 250 points. It's not a huge amount of your army. But they've not done anything but absorb a little bit of firepower. And it's not like, oh, well, if you had, you know, I mean, I know points are a bit different, but if you had 3 Thunderwolves running around with Storm Shields and Thunderhammers, they're going to hit harder than them. They're tougher than them. You need to invest more firepower in them. They are more expensive. I get that. But they've fulfilled a similar role infinitely better and still have the chance of actually getting to you.
Yeah.
So you just kind of go, I'm just not sure if that's going to work. But I want to include them because they look really cool and I want to see what they are capable of doing if they hit. Yeah. It's the same with Lich Guard. I love the idea of a big phalanx of 10 of them walking up with the war scythes, you know, going like full, you know, like the Brendan Fraser mummy movie.
Yeah.
And you know, in the first film where Imhotep calls out the 4 royal guards,
and they do that thing. Yeah, exactly.
And it's all like, and that's how I envision them on the tabletop. Just these wars, they're just, you know, they're in that sort of like motionless. They're just walking.
Yeah.
And you can imagine fighting the Necrons would be terrifying because
there's
no sound. The only sounds you're hearing is like energy weapons and the screams of your comrades melting to Gore's weapons. And then all of a sudden you look up and there's this guy with a scythe. He just goes, and he impales your friend and then just stares at you.
Yeah.
And you'll be like, oh no,
you're scared now.
I'm so dead.
No, I'm not.
But then you go, yeah, but 300 points for a unit of 10 of them that are gonna die super quick. It's not worth it. No. It's not worth it. And then that's when you go into the old habits of going, well, I'll just take a bunch of wraiths, I'll just take a bunch of destroyers, and I'll just run a big blob of immortals.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of people that, like I say, going back to, I'm going to take some reanimators, and you can hide them, I get that, and you can take the cryptex, and now all of a sudden, you've got a free up, re-rolling ones on a big blob of 20 big blob of 20 warriors. My counter-argument to that, and it always has been all throughout 8th when people were talking about using that and some ghost arcs, and you can heal loads, and you use the orb, and all of a sudden you had one guy, and now you're back up to 20, you go, that's awesome. If someone couldn't kill 20 toughness 4, 1 wound 4 up save models, you were already in a very strong position.
Yeah.
You know, a unit of 8 berserkers gonna walk through them.
Oh,
a unit of,
they're gonna love it.
A couple of intercessors they're not even gonna bat an eyelid at that.
No.
You know, they're just gonna go, yeah, I'll just and I'll just shoot you off the board. You know, you might take, and that is fine because then they're shooting at warriors. But it's not just the warriors that you've bought. You've bought the warriors, you've bought the cryptake, you've bought the reanimator, you've bought a character with an orb, and now all of a sudden you spent nigh on 600 points on a unit that, if your trick pays off, will look amazing. And your opponent will be like, oh my god, that's so cool, what do I do? All of my firepower did nothing. But they probably won't. They'll probably be like, yeah, okay, cool, where's your trick now?
Yeah.
You've now got 300 plus point support elements doing nothing.
Yeah.
So that is an issue with them. Having said that, I know that's a bit of a sort of a negative, ugly, bad tangent there, but I think the Necrons are going to be really, really interesting as people get used to playing them more and more and more. I think you're certainly going to see a lot more tricksy stuff. The Deceiver is the redeploy, like anything to redeploy in 9th is so good now.
So good.
Because you can use it offensively, defensively. He's one of the rare ones that allows you to redeploy outside of your deployment zone as well.
Yeah, which is cool.
So you can just kind of go, yeah, I know I can't charge, so you can't use it for like an alpha on those 10 unit of Lich Guard, for example, but you can just go, those Lich Guard are just going to be right up in that obscuring terrain piece, and I know that you don't have the speed to move around because of where I've placed them.
Yeah.
I'm getting you next turn. So there are ways that you can mitigate it, and that's what's going to be interesting for me is finding those ways of playing around with them, and hopefully the points changes that have happened to other armies will be enough of a gap to see what that difference will be. I'm a bit skeptical on the points for the Necrons, but we've got to work with what we've got at the moment, and making it work is going to be that's the challenge for me.
Yeah,
I am going to run the Scorpex. I will probably never run the Reanimator though, as cool as it is. The Doomstalker, however, because he looks basically the same but with a cannon on the back. Yes, which is going to be sick, right? So look, yeah, I know I've talked a lot at length there. I am looking forward to using them. I think they are. I think the final verdict, as it were, they're in an ugly spot.
Yeah, I'd agree.
They're certainly not worse off than they were, I think, outside of a few like fringe, like Fly. But then you can kind of offset that by going, sure, you just need to change your playstyle a little bit, not use them as effectively. They also benefit, similar to Tau, by going, I mean, they were ballistic skill free anyway. But again, you'd come up against armies that would be stacking modifiers, and you'd be like, oh, cool, my Tesla does nothing.
Yeah.
My Gauls is hitting on 5s, my Destroyers are hitting on 5s, and I can use Extermination Protocols, but I can only reroll 1s and 2s because of the way that it's worded and failed hits. You don't have to worry about that as much anymore, so those sorts of core mechanics do help the Necrons a lot.
Yes.
But they help other armies a lot.
Yeah.
So they're in a very similar boat to a lot of armies in that way. We'll have to see what happens. I mean, Well, yeah. You've used them. I know you're not as hardcore as me on the Necrons.
Yeah.
But I think you hit the nail on the head when you said that you look at it and you kind of go, what do you want to do?
Yeah, yeah. And that, it's interesting because as someone, and maybe it's interesting from a perspective of someone who doesn't play them as much. Because there are certain armies that you look at and you go, right, it's very clear how this army is designed to play. And then you go, cool, you look at the curve, you see the through line, and then you go, brilliant, I'm now going to build around that. And we have to do that a lot here because,
Yeah.
right? And sometimes we miss stuff. It's because we don't deep dive into every faction because there's not enough hours in the day, to be quite frank, for us. But there are certain armies which you look at and go, yeah. And when I look at the Necrons, I just kind of go, I don't get it. I don't understand how these guys play at their most efficient. And for all of the reasons you've just said, I just kind of go, yeah, I don't. I like them. This is the thing. I like them, and I like using them. And there are certain models which I will always love using, like the Stormcaller. I mean, he's great. Maybe I got to call that strong. I'm going to call it down. I like the pyramids, which are terrible, but I like them. And so there's lots of cool stuff in there, but they don't see. It just doesn't seem realized in the rules. So I don't like, as someone who just looks at it, other than the fact that just from a hobbying perspective, I would love to collect Necrons. They look so cool. But from a gameplay perspective, at the moment, and look, we're getting whole bunches of new models and stuff, and it's really interesting what's coming. But I wouldn't pick them up for that reason alone.
Yeah, at their current sort of army design, it's a definite it's an ugly from me because it just feels ironically unfleshed out.
Yeah.
Which because they don't have flesh, you see.
Yes. Oh yeah. Very good.
Whereas you look at some armies and you feel like you look at them and you go, this feels cohesive.
For me, and again, I haven't done a huge deep dive into it. I actually think one of the most, just to give you an example, right? One of the most fleshed out armies in the game at the moment is the AdMech.
Yeah.
Because they have so many different models which fulfill the different needs that you will need to. Maybe we'll have a look at them properly soon.
Yeah, we will.
But the thing is that's, and so it's entirely possible because AdMech used to be a little bit similar in a way. They were kind of they were like a gun line that wasn't very mobile. They didn't have transports or anything, and so they were just kind of this thing that you kind of like, I understand, but it kind of doesn't work all the time. And then all you really needed to do, especially in 8th, was get as close as you could and then just tie everything up, and that was the end of them. They were just done at that point, especially when Dakabots were a big thing. I know I've kind of gone off on one, but what I mean is the difference is the comparison is like when you look at an army like that and you go, it's so fleshed out, they've got such excellent screening, they've got such excellent speed now, they've got all these great weapons, there's different ways you can play the army. And then you look at that, and then you look at an army like Necrons, to a degree Tau, to a degree Orcs, weirdly at the moment, although that's a discussion we'll have at some point as well. And then so you look at them both, and I mean, obviously, I know I'm comparing oranges and apples, as you say, but it's not, one's very clear, and the other one isn't. Especially when the core mechanic is something which is all great in your head, but it's not. So I think they're in a very ugly place. It's not to say they can't do well.
They absolutely
can.
But
it's
and I don't want them to be like a point and click army. No, like, that's the thing. That's not what we're saying.
No, but you want the choices. You want it to be dynamic. You want it to be, if I want to run it this way, it does that. Or I want to, if I do need the fire support, but there's got to be elements in there that really make it
work.
Eligible.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So from an outsider looking in, you've put it way more succincly than I would, but like
I don't know about succinctly.
Well, no, but you have, but when you look at it from the outside, I think if how do I put this? For someone who doesn't play them a lot, for someone who doesn't really know them that well, if you can look at an army and look at the codex and still have a similar conclusion that someone that plays them, to me that says, okay, it's in an ugly spot.
Yeah. It just needs it needs a bit of a rework, and we all know that that's going to happen. Like we know that's going to happen. You guys know that's going to happen. Like Games Workshop have said it's happening. They even said in one of the streams. They said that Reanimation Protocols is being rebuilt. At the moment, it's not here, so it's irrelevant right now. We get that. So we've got to work with what we've got, and what we've got is a tough army to make work. But that doesn't mean that it can't. And that's where that's why we really enjoy reading your guys' comments, because a lot of you said, Ben, you're mad. Have you seen this? And I go, I hadn't seen that actually, and that is really good. So look, feedback. Let us know what your feelings are about it. Unless you have anything you'd like to add, I think that's I think we've covered everything, and we're probably starting to run over a little bit. We're trying to keep these short, and we knew that this one was going to be a tough one because there's a lot to say about Necrons. But that's. We'll be revisiting all of these as and when it is at the appropriate time to do so.
But other than that, like, you guys are getting some really cool models, and that's just cool. That's just a cool thing. So as someone who can't paint, they kind of make me want to be able to paint. Do you know what I mean? And that's big coming from me. That's huge.
I can't paint very well.
I can't paint at all, Chef. I'm terrible. We've all seen my army. Let's just move on.
I get by on sort of like your tabletop quality. Just don't zoom in or like pick them up. But the problem is with my paint scheme. And I know that I haven't brought my Necrons out for quite a while, guys. But with my paint scheme, I'm looking at all these new models going like, oh, they're so amazing. And then I go, but my paint scheme is so dumb because it's so long and convoluted for something that doesn't look very good when it's finished. Damn it. I'm going to be getting the Void Dragon at the very least.
Yes, for sure.
And definitely some of the War of the Worlds Doom Stalkers.
Oh, they're so cool. They're so cool. Well, look, guys, I hope you enjoyed that. As ever, thank you for your support. Please leave your comments below. Let us know what you think. And then that's it.
Yep.
That's the end.
That's that for that.
So this has been me, the Bone, and you, the Chef.
It's been me, the Chef.
And we will see you all very soon.